Hey friends, it's a painting day around here, and I am excited to show you how I paint a wall or this room using a paint sprayer. I've gotten tons of questions about this on my Instagram stories over the last couple months as I've been painting every room in our rental house, and I wanted to answer some of those questions today and just give you a full overview of what it looks like for me to paint a room using the paint sprayer. So let's get started. When we moved into this rental a couple months ago, we knew that one of the first things that had to happen to make it feel fresh and clean and more like home for us was to paint all of the walls. You can see this yellow that we've got going, and it's everywhere. My very favorite white is Extra White by Sherwin-Williams. I used it in my last house, I'm using it again here, and I've been spraying it all with a paint sprayer. I've been using the HomeRite Finish Max Super, which is a brand new paint sprayer from HomeRite. I had their Finish Max before, and I loved it for smaller projects, but to paint the whole house, it's been really nice to use the Finish Max Super because with the Finish Max Super, there's a wide nozzle tip that you can use and not have to thin the paint at all. So I'm taking the paint directly from the paint can, straight into the sprayer, putting it on the walls, and I'm just knocking this house out, and it's feeling so good. I've gotten a lot of questions about how to use the paint sprayer, what it's like, if there's a lot of overspray, and the A to Z questions about the sprayer, and so I thought that since I was gonna be painting this room, today I'm painting the master bedroom, that I would just give you sort of an inside scoop of what it looks like for me to paint a bedroom using the paint sprayer. I thought I'd quickly go through all the different things that I have to get ready to paint a room. I have my hat because I get paint in my hair if I don't, a painting t-shirt, I've got my painting pants on, my painting shoes, and then I have my actual tools and things that I need. So I've got paint. This is Emerald Paint by Sherwin-Williams. It's my very favorite paint. It's super durable, one coat, is primer and paint all in one, and it's washable. I like using the flat because I don't like the sheen, and with the flat I still get the durability and washability in this level of paint. It's a super nice paint, and I use it all the time. So that's my paint. I'm using Extra White by Sherwin-Williams, which is their base white, and it's my favorite. Perfect white. I use a little paintbrush to go around the edges and to start with prep before I start spraying. All the corners, things that I don't want to have to get the overspray very near by, like moldings and things like that, I'm gonna go around the edges with the paintbrush. Tape is what I'm going to use. I'm not gonna paint the ceiling in this room. In some of the other rooms in the house I have, and then I just sprayed right up into the ceiling. But in this room I'm not going to, and so I'm going to tape off the ceiling, then paintbrush around the edge, and then I will avoid getting paint on the ceiling. And then I've got my HomeRite Finish Max Super. You can tell that it's used, well loved around here. This is one of the pieces that goes in it to suck up the paint. This is the bottom that I hook on, that I put the paint into. I'll show you how I do that. And the nozzle is underneath here. This is changed the direction. And then I always use it with an extension cord because the cord's kind of short. Gloves. This is new for me. I've painted everywhere we've lived for, the last 10 years, and I always I didn't ever use gloves before, and it makes such a difference to just at least have my hands clean when I'm done. There might be paint everywhere else, but at least I can keep my hands clean. I actually use a couple pairs of gloves because every time I take them off, then I use a new pair. And let me show you, I have drop cloth down over, I just moved all the furniture to the middle of the room, and so everything's covered with this drapey, just plastic drop cloth. That's from Home Depot. And then on the floors, I have, again from Home Depot, just this painter's drop cloth. This one is a hallway version, which is really nice because I just use it around the edges. I also have a stool on hand for reaching those high places up in the corners of the room. Once I have the room all taped off the way that I like it, then I'm gonna start using this small paintbrush, and I just carry around the lid to just get a little bit of paint on it to be able to do all of the edges. This is when I put on my gloves so that I'm ready to paint and not get paint all over my hands as I get going. And I just used a little paintbrush, so you can see here, and I'm gonna just paint all of the edges. If I wasn't painting white, I probably would have taped along this doorway because I wouldn't want to get the white on the paints mixed. But because I have white on the trim, I can just paint right along there and feel pretty confident about it not messing everything up. I want to show you how I like to get a little bit of extra paint. I load the brush up with paint and then put it on the lid. That way I can carry the lid around and have paint here on the lid and not have to haul the whole gallon of paint everywhere I go around the room to do the trim. It always feels really good to get all those edges finished because then all you have to do is spray in the middle. It kind of reminds me of being a little kid and coloring in the coloring pictures. I always would trace the outline very carefully, you know, in thick crayon, and then I could kind of go crazy in the middle. That's what it feels like when I'm painting a room. I get all of the edges neatly painted so that I give myself space to spray next to, but not onto, the ceiling, the door frames, the windows, all of those things, and then I can just bust out the sprayer and get the thing done. So let me show you how I put the sprayer together, and then I'm gonna start spraying. Okay, to get started with the Finish Max Super Sprayer, you need to decide what type of paint you're using. So like I said, I love this sprayer particularly because I don't have to thin the paint when I'm using the red nozzle. So when you get it out of the box, it'll explain all of this to you, but you just choose the nozzle that you're gonna put on, and it goes right there. And then you fit all these other pieces together, screw them on. When you have this knob pointing this way, horizontally, that means you're spraying horizontally. And when you turn it vertical, that means you're gonna spray vertical. And it didn't make sense to me at first, but basically, when I'm spraying vertical, I want a big horizontal line to go, and that's what's happening here. And when I have it horizontal and I'm spraying this way, I get a nice vertical line, so it'll make sense as we go along. Okay, so I've got this all together. I poured my paint directly from my paint can into this paint container. So this is my Sherwin-Williams Emerald paint in flat extra white, my favorite paint. It goes right here. And then this is like the little straw that sucks up that paint from there, and it just fits right in here. So all the pieces really go together very simply and intuitively. You just stick it all together. This gets a little heavy at the beginning, so it's an arm workout to use your sprayer. You fit it on, screw this on, and then once I plug it in, I'm good to go. I mean, simple as that. This right here is the trigger. I'm going to use that as I'm spraying. You can also adjust how much paint comes out right here with this little rolling nozzle. Then you pull the trigger and you're ready to go. Again, I'm going to put on my gloves to get started spraying, and I'm going to start in the farthest corner of the room, just like you would when you're sweeping or mopping, just so that you can kind of work your way and then exit, let everything dry and air out. I have the windows open in here. There's good ventilation. The Emerald is a lower VOC paint as well, so I'm not too worried about the fumes, but I do wear this bandana just to keep paint as much as possible out of my nostrils and my nose hairs and on my face and my hair and all those things. Just kind of cover up because you do get that kind of fine paint dust happening. Let's get started. Okay, for demonstration purposes, I want to just start on this wall right here. I'm actually going to go in the corner, but this is where I've got everything set up. So simple as I've got this on horizontal. I already did a little test spray. See, that's going this way. That means that I'm going to get a nice vertical line of paint. And you just, from, I don't know, between 1 and 3 feet away, probably, I use big strokes going from right to left, left to right, or if I'm going vertical, big strokes up and down. You don't want to do a lot of like jostling. The paint's going to spray more evenly if you just keep it flat and go kind of slow and nice. The further away you get, of course, the more distributed the paint is going to be. The closer you get, the more of like a specific line. So depending on what you're painting and how you want it to go, you may adjust your own sort of distance from the wall. I think I tend to stay about 12 to 15 inches from the wall naturally because I like to see just where the paint is going and not feel like I have a ton of overspray, and that's the best way for me to do that. I also like to paint in lines, and I'll do one line and then come back and overlap by a couple inches and then do the next line. I feel like I get really great coverage on the whole wall only having to do one main coat, and then I go back and kind of touch up after. It's been a really great way to just quickly and easily knock out painting this house. So I'll just do a few lines and let you kind of get a feel for it. So you can see where my overlap is. So I can come back through and spray those lines where it's a little thinner in the middle. As it dries, it evens out a little bit, and then if I need to come back through and kind of touch up, then that's what I do. But basically I get a whole coat on the wall like that, and then I come back through later. As it dries, like I said, the wet paint and dry paint kind of even out. When you're just starting, this is really heavy, so sometimes I use my other hand to support just because this arm is only so strong. And then as less and less paint get in it, you'll notice that it gets lighter, and when it starts to sputter, you know that you're getting low on paint, and that's been my indication to add paint, when it starts to sputter out onto the wall. Every once in a while you may get a little bit of dried paint right here on the nozzle, so you just go ahead, I use a paper towel and just kind of rub that out, and then you just go for it. So I'm just gonna spend the next half hour probably painting as much as I can of this room, and I'll check back in and let you see how it's going. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. I've gone through 2 paint canisters on the sprayer, and I finished about half the room. So I'll try to back up and give you a good idea. One of the things I love about spraying, like I said, once you get those edges filled in, I feel like you can just paint and everything is like contained right there. I feel like it's a lot cleaner than rolling and brushing for some reason. It's just felt really easy to me. So I love how quick it is, and within another hour I'll have the whole room finished and it will start drying and I'll be able to start cleaning up. So this is the wall that I haven't done yet. One interesting thing about this rental is that none of the hardware has been taken off during painting before. So you can see that this light switch is just painted in place. The same thing down here with this switch. Normally you would take these face plates off to do your painting, but since this is the state of the rental I'm in, I'm just leaving them there and following suit and spraying right over them. So this wall you can see has not been painted yet, and half of this wall has not. But once we get over there, let's see if I can get my lighting to adjust. You can see about right here is where it switches, and this, it looks so stripy because of the different wetness and dryness of the paints, but when that dries, it's all going to be beautifully white. And then I finished all the way over here and halfway on this wall. So that's a pretty drastic contrast. You can see this white, when it dries up, is gonna be all super nice. And then this is the color that we've been dealing with. So obviously it's a lot lighter, brighter, and nicer to have the white on the walls in this little tiny space. I've gone through about half of my gallon of paint. I'll finish up the other gallon, maybe a little more to finish off and touch up in this room. I've had to change the paint canister twice on half the room, so I'm guessing probably another 2 times to finish it up. And the one thing that I have to do now that I've done this half where I had the drop cloth on the floor is shuffle all the drop cloth over to this other half of the room so that I don't get paint on the floor while I finish up. It's been about an hour, maybe an hour and a half since I started putting this room together to paint, and I just finished painting. All of the walls are still a little bit wet, and so I'm gonna wait until it all dries for an hour or 2 and see if there's spots that I need to touch up. But otherwise, with all the other rooms that I've done, if I made sure I got pretty good coverage with the sprayer as I was going, then I didn't really have to do much after. So just as the paint dries, you can see kind of the striations behind me. All of that fades away as the paint gets even and dry all together, and the different thicknesses of paint get dry. And then it just is this beautiful white. Let me back up and give you a little look around the room. You can see the difference from the yellow of the ceiling to the white of the walls, and how much brighter and crisper it's gonna feel in here once all of this paint dries. And I don't have that kind of murky yellow color anymore, but I have the nice white on the walls. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this tape down in just a second, and I'll have a nice even line where the ceiling is. Ideally, in a house, I feel like the ceiling should always be white, or at least lighter, than the wall color, unless you're trying to do like a statement ceiling and do it really dark. But it just isn't worth the effort for me in this particular room to do the ceiling. I did paint the ceiling in the bathroom, and I painted the ceiling in the kitchen where the spaces were a little smaller and there wasn't quite as much natural light. I felt like it really opened it up. But in this room, it would have been a huge hassle to do the whole ceiling, and so I feel like once the walls are done with that nice line, it's still gonna look great. The last thing I have to do before I'm officially done with painting today is clean out my sprayer. I do that in the kitchen sink with soap and water. Just rinse everything really well. I take all the pieces apart, take the little nozzle off. There's a little brush that comes with the sprayer, and so you can scrape all the paint, all the spots that you need to, and just clean it really thoroughly in between each use so that it works great the next time that you need it and it doesn't have a bunch of dried paint stuck up in there. You can see as things dry out that everything starts to even out and look really nice. I've started putting things up on the walls, and I'm putting the bed back together and just kind of making it feel like a room again. And it's so nice to have these fresh, clean white walls rather than that ugly yellow paint. While I'm thinking about it, before I finish, I want to answer a couple quick questions that I get over and over about the sprayer. One, is there a lot of overspray? I think that there's a few inches of overspray on either side where you get a little bit of speckle, and then there's that paint dust that I talked about that goes kind of throughout the room. So that's why I cover everything with plastic and I paint the edges, but I don't worry too much about things, you know, a foot or two away getting paint on them. That's not gonna happen unless you're a little bit reckless. So not a ton of overspray. I've actually felt like it was really manageable. Number two, does the paint sprayer provide good coverage? I think that this has a lot more to do with the paint that you're using than the sprayer. The sprayer can provide as much coverage as you need. You can do, with one coat, I feel like it gets a pretty good dusting, and then as you go over it and kind of cover up the patches or those lines kind of in between, then you're all set. But if you're using a cheap paint, the paint itself might not cover very well, so it might require more coats. When you're using a nicer paint that's like a paint primer in one, then you'll find that you have better results with better coverage, and as it dries, it all kind of evens out really beautifully, like this emerald paint from Sherwin-Williams does, versus needing to go back and do several other coats to make it look nice. Another question I get is, do you think it's easier to spray than to roll? And, you know, it kind of depends on you and your style of painting, and I guess maybe your level of how often you do it. I've been pretty good with a roller, and I just feel like the sprayer is faster and cleaner and a little more efficient. I have more things to deal with when I have the roller. I have the paint tray, I have the paint can, I have the roller itself, I have, you know, I still have to tape all the edges and still have to brush all the edges. And so when I'm using the sprayer, I feel like I do all the same prep, but then the actual painting of the walls is a lot easier and faster for me than if I was using a roller. There are going to be times when a roller will probably be better, but I think that if you haven't used a sprayer, it's something you're interested in, you should definitely grab one and give it a go. It's not a huge investment. I think the HomeRite Finish Max Super is $99 on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description box straight to the one that I use. It's not a huge investment when you consider you could spend that same amount on, you know, a couple rollers and several foam things, and you're going to be able to use the sprayer over and over again. So if it's something that you're interested in, or you're going to do a lot of painting in your future, or you're painting things with lots of nooks and crannies, like wicker furniture, or you're doing doors or cabinets, you're definitely going to want a sprayer for those types of things, and this one is a great way to go. I think that's it for now. This has been a long video to share all the ins and outs of painting this bedroom with me. I'm going to give you a final look around. I want to remind you to subscribe to my channel, to Live Free Miranda, where I share tips and tutorials for creative, adventurous life and motherhood. I hope that you'll come back over and over again to dive into projects with me and see how things work.